This lens comes at an interesting time when OMDS just released their first OM branded 20mm f1.4 Pro. This is TTArtisan's 23mm f1.4. Let's see if it's any good. Welcome back, my name is Cheng, a London-based photographer and filmmaker. Today's video is all about this little guy here, the TTArtisan's 23mm f1.4. Earlier I said that this lens arrival is very interesting. Well, because I only just finished the OM 20mm f1.4 Pro review a few weeks ago. And then this lens came through my door. And you know how much I love the OM's new lens? And if you missed my review, the link is right up here. Not only TTArtisan's new 23mm f1.4 has a very similar focal length to OM's new Pro lens, but it has the same bright 1.4 aperture. So I'm very curious how this little guy performs, given its rather low retail price. However, I won't compare this to OM's 20mm f1.4 Pro, as they are very different, both in class, optically, and features. A little disclaimer that TTArtisan sent this to me before Christmas, but they didn't ask me to say anything or I get paid to promote this lens. Therefore, everything I say in this video, including all the sample images, are of my own. And there will be plenty of samples so you can assess the look generated from this lens yourself. So without further ado, let's get this review started. Unsurprisingly, TTArtisan's new 23mm f1.4 is a very solid lens. Full metal barrel with, hey, listen to this. Yes, it has a clicked aperture. This is good news for all the die-hard photographers out there. But even for videographer, the click is very subtle and very muted, and it won't affect filming at all. Both focus and aperture rings have good resistance, and feels triple the price if you ask me. So, well done TTArtisan. And in terms of design, well, you just have to look at this once again close up. And it screams 70s, right? And I personally dig this a lot. It's not just about my old age showing, but only because when everyone is going for that minimalistic, futuristic tester look, and TTArtisan just goes the opposite direction. And that is pretty refreshing. And from their website, they have two versions of this lens. A stealthy, all-black version here, or the, even more vintage retro-looking silver version here. And you have a retro-looking camera, the EM5 Mark II right here, and this combo will look very interesting. Whatever version you choose, you will definitely get some envy looks from your fellow hipsters and fashion-conscious friends. Well, if I have to nitpick something to complain about, well, it have to be the omission of a lens hood and a printed marking on the lens. But don't forget that this is marketed as a budget lens, so I wouldn't even consider them as negatives. In fact, I would call it impressive. TTArtisan's new 23mm 1.4 not only looks vintage, it handles like one too. With a diameter of 60mm and 40.5mm in height, it's hardly big at all. In fact, it's about the size of a Leica 35mm f2 Summicron or Olympus 17mm 1.8. But at 250 grams, the TTArtisan is more than double the weight of Olympus and about the same weight as the Leica, which cost about 20 times more. So if you use a full metal camera body like the Pen F or the EM5 Mark II, this combination is very comfortable and balanced. But if you use it on a lightweight setup like the Pen EP or EPL series or the new entry-level EM10 Mark III or even Mark IV, you'll find it front heavy. It's not uncomfortable by any means, but something to bear in mind. Here's the boom pack of this review, and how does this $99 lens perform? Well, don't worry, my brick wall will review it all for you. And you will also see a few sample images I took around London after, so you can see what it's like in real life situation. At wide open, the central area is very decent, if lack a little contrast, but very usable, and a little boost in clarity in post will definitely give all the blacks you need for your images. And stopping down to f2 and 2.8 is as sharp as any, and I mean any modern lenses. And IQ peaks at around 5.6 and diffraction kicks in at f11. At wide open, the corners are a little soft and smudgy, but stopping down to 2.8, everything becomes a lot clearer. And if you need edge-to-edge sharpness at the pixel level, then you may need to stop down to f8. But then again, I'm really just talking about pixel peeping and not from the aesthetic point of view. And to me, 2.8 is already acceptable. Just like any 1.4 lenses I've tested and used, including the expensive ones, Vignette is always present at 1.4. TTArtisan is perhaps a little worse in this department here, especially without a lens profile correction in camera. So it loses around 1.5 stop or lighter at 1.4 and 0.5 stop at around 2.8. Vignette does disappear though when you stop down to 5.6. But again, unless you're shooting film, Vignette is very easy to correct in post these days. TTArtisan's 23mm 1.4 does exhibit barrel distortion, but it's not super severe and can be flattened with a +6 setting in Adobe Lightroom. Chromatic aberration is also present at 1.4 when shooting high contrast areas, but all gone by 2.8. And the good thing is that CA isn't bad enough to have a reversible effect on images in most cases, and can be fixed in post very easily. Just like the lens appearance, the bokeh has a vintage touch to it. Remember, bokeh affects the rendering of the lens. So, depends on your taste, it can be very useful to give your viewers that 80s look. It's not clinical, and I would say very filmic. If you follow me, you know I love flares, and something I find very romantic. I use it to my advantage when shooting couples and portraits, and useful when I want to create some cinematic footage. So, it's a love and hate thing, like Marmite, and solely depends on your requirements and taste. And flare do present on TTArtisan, but not bad in most cases, and very usable for my type of photography. If you want to adapt this lens for video work, well, then you may want to look somewhere else, as it has a very heavy focus breathing, almost like breathing after you run a marathon. Yeah, like a zoom lens, worst case. And unless you are the type who loves to pull focus from infinity to close, it may still be a good second choice for some very specific projects. TTArtisan's 23mm 1.4 is originally designed for APS-C cameras and later adapted to Micro Four Thirds. I've read some initial comments about the lens aperture ring design and noted being awkward to use. But for me, however, I love it. For those who haven't handled any vintage lenses before may find it difficult to use. But this design is in fact very common during the 50s and 60s. The serrated edge is actually very good and differentiates itself from the focusing ring when you're touching it with gloves. And personally, I think TTArtisan may have produced a rather special photographer's lens. Okay, its non-clinical IQ and 80s rendering may not be everyone's taste, but for those who crave for some unique look that somehow stands out from the oversaturated pixel-perfect images on the internet, this lens may present a window of relief, escaped from the norm. I've tested a few TTArtisan lenses over the past 12 months, and this 23mm 1.4 may be my favorite yet. and I can't wait to see what's next though. But whatever it is, I note we have a ton of lenses to choose in Micro Four Thirds, both OEM and third parties. This brings to the end of this review, and I hope you enjoyed it. You know what to do now. Thumb if you liked it, and sub if you want to stay in touch with all things photography, filmmaking, and of course, OEM system. Peace. Right, what do you think of TTArtisan's 23 1.4? Well, it is a pretty darn good performer for $99. It's cheap. So cheap that I think that everyone should have one in the bag, whether you have a 25 or the latest OEM system 20mm 1.4 Pro already in your bag. Doesn't really matter, because this guy is really fun to play with. I think if you really dig that kind of old school filmic look, you cannot go wrong with this lens. There are a lot of flaws. Of course, you know, you've seen my review already, and but nothing that I would be too concerned about. You know, just think of it as an old school vintage film camera lens. You know, it's really, really cool, and I really do like the look of it. All the rendering, especially the silver version. Seriously, you know, that silver version is probably by far my favorite version of the two. Yeah, when you match on the EM5, even the Pen F, you know, it just looks gorgeous, right? Anyway, I'll leave you to it, and if you want to go back to have a look at my sample images again to see the rendering and the image quality, how it looks in general, yeah, you're welcome to do so. And also, you may be wondering what this circular lens that I'm filming with at the moment. Well, this is another lens that I'm testing, and also the review is coming out very soon, so stay tuned for that. This is really another cool lens I want to show you guys. I find it really fun to use. It's a very niche lens. You can see it's a fisheye. Yeah, you know, it's no hiding about this. You know, otherwise you won't get this circular surrounding of me, but it's a full circle, perfect full circle in photo modes. Yeah, it's cool. Anyway, see you guys all soon. Happy shooting, stay safe, and be creative. Bye for now.